Hello and welcome to Utopia. My name is Tim Copeland and I'm the blog's editor-in-chief. Today we have Mark Tyneway, co-founder and systems engineer at OP Labs. Welcome to the show. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Tim. Thanks for having me. Really excited to come on today and talk about the superchain.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, just want a quick note that if you are hiring in crypto, you should use Campus. It's the block's newest crypto hiring tool, and it will help you pick out the real crypto natives out of all the rest of your candidates. Head to theblock.co/campus for a 3-month free trial. Now, today's episode is our third one on Ethereum Layer 2s over the last few weeks. We've had ZK Sync, we've had Arbitrum, and now we have Optimism. So, Mark, looking back, how do you view Optimism's progress in 2024 and early 2025?
Yeah, Optimism is definitely been growing a lot over the last couple of years, and it has been a wild ride. Um, you know, I feel very lucky that we were able to, come out and basically ship the OP stack. And with all of the adoption across all of these different, chains that have adopted the OP stack, we have, there's OP mainnet, there's Base, Unichain, Kraken with Ink, Sony with Sonium. So yeah, the Optimism ecosystem has been cooking. It's been growing fast, and I'm really excited to see, where it goes over this year.
And out of all of those sort of big name partnerships that you just listed, which one interests you the most and why?
That's a really difficult question. It's kind of like asking someone to choose their favorite child, you know? So, I think all the different ecosystems have something interesting about them. Like, for example, World Chain, they are, building this block builder that prioritizes um, real humans. So, as a way to like disincentivize spam. So each of these ecosystems can kind of focus on their own target audience and market and kind of focus on like a different segment. And this shared standard through the OP stack enables all of them to seamlessly get upgrades and basically move forward with the advancements as like one chain kind of builds out something, it can easily be used for another chain. So it allows everyone to kind of move forward more quickly together.
It's quite ironic with the World uh, Coin project, how they're sort of trying to. You've got on one side they're building AI, and on the other side they're trying to like make sure we can identify humans. I guess you sort of one comes with the other. Yeah. So according to reporting from CoinDesk, the Optimism Foundation is giving out at least 150 million tokens to projects worth roughly sort of $300 million at the time of the grants. I was curious, like, how do you think? Do you think all of that is sort of money well spent? Do you think all of that has paid dividends?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think that that is like really something that we should talk about now. I think that we're very focused on shipping technology and building out ecosystems with partners that solve real problems for end users.
Okay, so as in, do you guys keep much like watch on what those projects are doing, how the money's spent?
Yeah, definitely. Um, so the tokens are used for governance. So basically like there's like a whole like process with delegation where projects delegate and they kind of participate in voting on capital allocation. Like one really cool thing that we're doing is this retroactive public goods funding. And basically, like the idea there is to fill a gap in the kind of economy where historically value has not accrued to open source and kind of projects that are building in the commons. So, you know, um, teams can use tokens to kind of vote in governance, and help drive the direction of programs like retro funding.
And with the launch of Unichain, do you think Ethereum is ready for every app having its own chain?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think that the future of crypto is moving away from this idea of chains towards apps. Um, let's look at something like Instagram, for example. The number of daily active users on Instagram would easily fill up a blockchain today if, comments and posts were actually on chain. So, I think that the future is moving away from this idea of chains and it's just going to become infrastructure for apps. So, there's definitely a future where all of the swaps of Uniswap can fill up not only one chain, but multiple chains.
And members of the Uniswap DAO, there was a bit of a hoo-ha maybe like a month or so ago that they don't govern Unichain as it's part of the super chain and therefore governed by Optimism. Like, do you think that's fair?
Um, you know, that's really not up to me to decide. I think the Uniswap ecosystem, I'll leave that up to them to kind of think about.
And with chains building on the OP stack, how do you ensure the OP mainnet remains sort of key and that sort of value flows back, towards the OP token? Sort of over like the last few years, we've seen Cosmos really struggle with that and have to really try and like sort of try and force value towards the sort of Cosmos hub, but they struggle because it was such a sort of an open ecosystem. Like, how do you sort of ensure that the OP mainnet remains like integral to the optimism, well, to the super chain?
Yeah, that's a great question. So OP mainnet is really focused on being the most neutral block space. So you could imagine that, if you're deploying on a chain that has its own business model of building apps, then you could imagine a world where they try to vertically integrate and just kind of eat your application. And OP mainnet is neutral. Um, Apps that live on OP mainnet don't need to worry about that.
And how is the plan going for native interoperability across the superchain?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So native interoperability is something that we have been thinking about and working on for a year and a half at this point. And basically, um, what native interoperability allows for is basically merging chains together. So the protocol itself is aware of the other chain. And this allows for trustless message passing between the chains at a low latency. And a lot of people right now are talking about, you know, making interoperability in the Ethereum ecosystem using intents. And with intents, the general flow is, you want to send from chain A to chain B. Under the hood, there's this market maker, and the market maker holds assets on both of the chains. And you basically send funds to the market maker on chain A, and then they send funds to you on chain B. And under the hood, it's up to the market maker to kind of rebalance and make sure that they have inventory across all these chains so they can kind of facilitate these fast exchanges of value. And in this process, the market maker is exposed to risk because of the classic double spend problem, right? The market maker wants to give like a good user experience and like unlock the funds instantly on the other side, on the other chain. But they run the risk of the um, you know originating chain reorging and the user double spending. Right. This is the exact same reason why exchanges wait some amount of time before they basically credit your account when you deposit into an exchange because they want to make sure that the chain is finalized before they credit you. So these intent-based systems, you can kind of think of them almost like the same way that centralized exchanges do um, crediting. And um, with the native interop, we aim to remove that risk so that you don't need to have this intermediary that is kind of facilitating the cross-chain swap. It's directly built into the protocol itself.
Okay, so how do you build something like that in? Like, it sounds super, pretty complicated.
Okay, I think the best way to explain this is um, chains that are natively interoperable become coupled in both their safety and their liveness. So, what this means is that the chains reorg together. This is what allows for very fast, um, messages to be passed between chains without any risk of like a double spend. Um, then the proof system is all coupled together. And basically, we have a single proof system where all of the chains basically can be proven together. And this allows for, this basically powers the bridge.
Is a part of this that you have like whoever's running the sequences are running like multiple chains within the super chain? Does that play a role in it?
Yeah. So each chain operator needs to run a node for each of the chains that are interoperable. And especially the sequencer. And the sequencer um, basically has a new, the sequencer needs to basically build blocks that only contain valid cross chain transactions. Otherwise, the nodes will reorg out those blocks. And oftentimes, people like to say that, the sequencer has more power than it actually does. Interestingly enough, the only thing that the sequencer really can do is choose the total ordering of the transactions and then delay a transaction. So the sequencer cannot ultimately censor transactions or arbitrarily change the rules of the network. So in the case of interop, um, we basically allow for application developers to easily read the logs of other chains or like the events. If you're like a Solidity developer, you've ever like written a smart contract that emits an event, these events are now the primitive that can be read across chains. And using this simple primitive, there's all sorts of things that you can build on top of it.
Cool. What sort of things, for instance?
So you can build cross chain callbacks. So people have been talking about this idea of like a shared sequencer and synchronous composability for a long time. And basically, what our native interoperability protocol allows for is you can do a single transaction that basically kicks off execution across multiple chains and then back all within the same block. And this is all, it all really just comes down to the sophistication of the sequencers. If there's like a single sequencer that can build blocks for multiple chains, or if there is a some sort of coordination between the sequencers. And we believe that this will enable applications to basically tap into liquidity across many chains. So right now, liquidity is siloed on a single chain. And if we can build out the infrastructure that makes it really easy to have deeper liquidity, where the liquidity is the sum across all of the chains that are interoperable, then we believe that we can build extremely deep liquidity pools that will basically kick off this network effect of attracting more and more liquidity.
So you could have decentralized exchanges where the funds held within a pair are across multiple chains.
Yes, 100%. This is an idea that we've been toying with where, you could imagine an AMM where the assets that are in this AMM are actually spread out across multiple chains. And the state of the AMM just lives on a single chain. And with some tricky, some smart contracts, um, you can basically build it so that um, it's agnostic and it doesn't care where the assets are. It just tracks what their balances are and kind of, sends out all the right messages to correctly, transfer them to where they need to be across all of the chains.
Sure. How does all of this compare to IBC?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say it is pretty different than IBC. Um, Definitely not an expert when it comes to like the IBC design, but one major thing about IBC is that um, it created a lot of assets that were not fungible because the security models were very different depending on the path that your asset traveled between different chains. So there's like this basically trade off that I believe is fundamental kind of between um, kind of sovereignty and kind of standardization. And the Cosmos ecosystem definitely maxed on sovereignty. And this resulted in like tons of different forks of their code base, the Cosmos SDK, um, and a very a user experience that was not predictable. So um, I think sovereignty is good, but at some point when building a product, there is diminishing returns past a certain point. So the idea with the superchain is we want to create the best developer platform and create a user experience that is very predictable and similar across all the chains. And this is because we believe that the bottleneck for adoption is actually not with protocol features, it is actually with onboarding and user experience. So I do not believe that adding new crazy features to the protocol itself is going to basically, kick off the next wave of adoption. The next wave of adoption is going to come from well thought through applications that solve real problems for everyday users, where it's very easy for them to onboard, it's very easy for them to use the application, and they can do complex on chain interactions with a single click.
Yeah, UX is always been a bit of an issue in crypto. My latest issue is I can't even connect a couple of websites to MetaMask anymore. It's just giving me QR codes and it's not working. And it's like, well, what do you do? Um, do you see like Base is quite a big competition then? Because obviously they've got like Coinbase is a big onboarding funnel, which sort of helps with that whole like user experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think Coinbase is doing an amazing job bringing more users on chain and really pushing forward the future of crypto adoption. And I really am excited to see more exchanges like Kraken with Ink bring more users on chain.
Yeah, I interviewed the Kraken Co CEO the other week. They definitely seem focused on the institutional element, tokenized equities, that sort of thing. I'd be curious to see if it's finally the right time for that.
Yeah, I think that the future is really bright. Um, you know, bringing stocks on chain, bringing equities on chain. I'm very curious how it will all play out. My suspicion is that there's probably some um, systemic alpha that will be lost if these equities come on chain, and I could see that really being like one of the next legs up um, in drivers of like a future bull market in the crypto ecosystem.
Yeah, I just had a thought, realized like, once you got tokenized equities on chain and then you've also got poly market, things like that, you start suddenly getting a lot more interoperability across all these things. And you said the future's bright a minute ago. It's interesting, like, having been in crypto for quite a long time, it does feel, I think some people that have been in for a while are a bit jaded by it. Like the last cycle, like a lot of previous cycles were sort of innovation based, but the last cycle was very meme coins heavy. Um, and it felt like the only sort of people winning were insiders. Uh, do you like, how optimistic are you? I guess is kind of the name of the project, but how optimistic are you about, sort of crypto's future? It sounds like you've remained very optimistic.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I joined crypto almost 10 years ago at this point, and I joined because of the vision. Um, and I don't think anything has changed. Um, I think it's really easy to get caught up in, the day-to-day Twitter sentiment, macro economy, like doing crazy things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're still doing the same thing. I'm trying to put, cryptography into the hands of everyone on this planet, enabling people to custody their assets and their identity, building the world computer. So I think that with meme coins, there was like a lot of insider activity and it's not good. And as an ecosystem, we do need to self regulate to some degree and not enable the bad actors. Um, but I do think that, a lot of people were onboarded in the last cycle. Um, there was a lot of, even though meme coins resulted in a lot of people losing money, I do think that the idea of a meme coin um, will come back, and hopefully um, we can, you know, have some more clear regulatory action so that we can basically create tokens that can be more than just a meme.
As in tokens that have like functionality or like value accrual, things like that.
Yeah, things like that. You could imagine there's lots of interesting, token mechanisms. And my guess is that the mechanisms that take off are there will probably be like some simple analogous ones that are very analogous to the way that TradFi works today. I also am really excited about net new value accrual mechanisms that might not have been possible in a TradFi or Web2 context. Just in they're uniquely enabled by being able to move value at the speed of light or arbitrarily fractionalizing tokens and tokenizing um, net new things.
Yeah, like it does seem with the regulatory changes in the US, we might start seeing a lot more experimentation with kind of now what you can do with it. Because I feel like with the meme coins, it felt like they were the only thing that was safe at the time. Whereas nowadays, there is a lot more excitement about, um, there's a lot more revenue sharing. We're seeing proposals for that. There seems to be demand for like sort of yield sharing stable coins, but that's sort of still in the regulatory works. And I do think there seems to be a preference right now for them to be not yield bearing. I think based on the latest guidance. Do you think it's going to be like an era of experimentation over the next few years?
I really hope so. I think that I have absolutely no idea what is gonna pan out in the future, but, um, bull market, bear market, I do think that, you know, it will be a good time to build, especially if it's a bear market. It's a bear market is always a good time to just focus in on, building and not having to worry about all of the hype and all the crazy things going on.
Do you think we're in a bull bear? Like, where do you think we're at right now?
Good question. You know, I don't know. Um, but what I do know is that right now, crypto is definitely the most relevant it has ever been in its history when it comes to its impact on geopolitics. Um, I think back to this moment with Google, where Google was basically, sending information on underwater sea cables between data centers, and they found out that the NSA was actually spying on the information like underwater, like in a submarine, like listening to these cables, and it actually caused Google to prioritize encryption to like protect their users' information. And in that moment, I remember hearing about this, like, I don't know, over 10 years ago at this point, and thinking, like, wow, okay, like Google is like a real player in geopolitics now. And I think that crypto is on the precipice of this. Basically, stable coins are serious holders of US treasuries. Um, and I think over the next few years, it's only going to become, um, crypto is only going to play a bigger role in geopolitics.
What are the challenges of building, sort of one of the, like the biggest projects in crypto during such complex political and market uncertainty?
Yeah, so I think it's just really about focusing on the mission. Um, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day turbulence and worry about what people are talking about on Twitter, but at the end of the day, it's just really important to focus on delivering value for users. And we have been focused on this interoperability thesis. And yeah, I'm just really excited to continue making progress on it.
With the sort of advent of layer twos, there's been a lot of an argument that they've sort of taken value away from ETH. Where do you think like they can help bring value back, or how do you see Ethereum working out long term um, with the sort of so many layer twos and you've got app chains? Like how do you think we end up in a position where we there is value being brought back into ETH, like there's a sort of value sink there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, people want ETH to go up in value, and they're upset that it's not going up in value. And there's actual real competitors to Ethereum at this point. And yeah, I don't think that people should expect like ETH or any crypto asset to only go up. It is still so early. And if you think about early stage companies, um, they're not like always optimizing for their valuation to like be going straight up. Um, and Ethereum is currently, it pivoted from, earning revenue from execution to earning revenue from providing data availability. So L2s, they use this data availability and they buy it from Ethereum. And right now, it is still very early in this transition. And so with Pectra, the next Ethereum hard fork, um, the amount of data availability is going to be like going up, the throughput. And this, as as this scales, Ethereum should be able to make more revenue from the data availability that they're selling to the L2s. And there's also a renewed focus back on actually scaling the execution. So as Ethereum scales both its data availability and its execution, I believe that, its revenue will go back up. And, um, I think that it's important to zoom out, believe in something, don't just get caught up in, the day to day just because Solana, captured a lot of attention in one market cycle doesn't mean that Ethereum is over with.
Okay, if with the sort of expansion of the blobs, my initial thought was that it would make it cheaper for L2s because they'll be like, it's a less competitive sort of market for the space because there's more space available. Are you saying that there'll be greater revenue like because of that there's more space available, or are you saying that if there's a huge increase in demand, which can then use up this space, that's what'll drive the revenue?
Yeah, so you could imagine, like, let's just, dumb example, you're selling a blob for, um, like, I'm just gonna use contrived numbers. If you're selling a one blob for 5 gwei and you're only allowed to sell, 3 blobs per block, then your revenue is capped at, 15 gwei. So, as you're able to sell more blobs per block, then you're, like, earning more revenue per block on the number of blobs that you're selling. So, as we increase the number of blobs that are available to be bought, we're, like, increasing the number of we're increasing the capacity, so that L2s can buy more blobs.
But I thought the blobs were on a dynamic fee schedule, as in, based on competition, the fee prices would rise.
Yeah, totally, that's when it goes over the target. So there's, like, a target. Right now, the target is 3 blobs per block with a maximum of 6. So with Petra, we're moving to a world where there's, a target of 6 blobs per block with a maximum of 9. So what this means is, Ethereum will be able to earn revenue, from 6 blobs, um, rather than from 3 blobs.
Okay. But to some degree, we also sort of need like a increase in demand for the layer twos.
Yeah, totally, which I 100% expect will happen. Something that we've observed in our on our data dashboards is that anytime that we increase the supply of gas by increasing the gas limit, it instantly gets used. Um, so a lot of OP stack chains are just like pegged at their gas target for like their throughput.
And then obviously we touched on this a bit earlier, but what is a super token?
So the super token. So it's one design pattern for basically creating a token that can easily move across chains in the super chain. So the idea is that we need to, design new primitives that enable applications to scale across many chains, right? Because one of the goals of the super chain is to build infrastructure that allows your app to automatically scale as more chains become interoperable. So with this idea of a super token, it's just a token that can be minted and burned and easily sent between all of these chains. And right now, these design patterns for these apps that are natively interoperable and they're built from first principles around horizontally scaling. There's no design patterns for this. This is something that realistically we will need to you know iterate many times to figure out what the right design patterns are. But I do believe that the end goal is to be able to build applications that can horizontally scale. Because in Web 2, in Web 2, when you're building a cloud application, you can, you build it in a way that um, when you turn on more computers, you can facilitate more traffic through your app. And in crypto, that is not the case right now. So we need to learn from the Web 2 world and how they have architected their applications and bring those learnings into crypto.
Were you glad to see Tether introduce its omni-chain token UST0?
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Um, I think the more stable coins out there and the more adoption and usage, I think is great. Um, I'm really excited for the day where I can just use the stable coins on a day-to-day basis, really paying for a coffee, paying for whatever, without having to, go out of my way to try to use them.
Okay. And where are we at with zero knowledge proofs coming to OP Stack chains?
That's a great question. So there are a couple of proof systems today that have been built that support zero knowledge proofs. And I just want to take a step back and really talk about the value proposition of zero knowledge proofs. Because one of my personal biggest pet peeves about this industry is just talking about technology and just like throwing buzzwords around. So, really, zero knowledge proofs are to enable fast withdrawals from an L2, because the proof system is all about withdrawing from the bridge. Because um, with an L2, users can deposit from the L1 into the L2. And then um, it's really important to be able to permissionlessly withdraw from that L2. So, proof system enables withdrawals. And generally, people talk about rollups as being optimistic or being zero knowledge. But the reality is that they're really talking about the bridge. Bridges are zero knowledge or optimistic, not a rollup. And so we built the OP stack in this modular way where it's really easy to plug in different types of proof systems. So the OP stack is just a rollup framework. And anybody can just take it, build their own proof system, deploy it, do whatever. Free software is amazing, very important. So there's actually two different companies that have built proof systems based on ZK for the OP stack, and it's Risk Zero and Succinct. So yeah, anybody can use the OP stack with one of their proof systems, and over time, as we build more confidence in zero knowledge technology as a whole, 100% the superchain will adopt it. It's really just a matter of time and the technology being hardened. And just to clarify, the specific value proposition of adopting it, because you should never adopt the technology just because it's a buzzword. You should always adopt the technology because it is solving a problem for users. And what the ZK proof system solves for users is it reduces the withdrawal time to withdraw from a network. Classically, an optimistic bridge takes 7 days to withdraw. That's a really long time. There's a lot of risk. A lot of capital is locked up that, is losing out on yield possibly during those 7 days. It's like risk that market makers have to take when rebalancing. So using a zero knowledge bridge, you can just provide a proof upfront and have the withdrawal time cut dramatically from 7 days.
What's the hardest part of growing a layer 2 chain?
Oh, distribution. Um, yeah, I mean, crypto as an industry still doesn't have killer apps that people are using on a daily basis. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with launching a new chain. Um, Because I do believe that users will go to whatever chain has apps that solve their problems. Um, but then if you think about developers, developers want to deploy on a chain that has all the integrations that they expect. So they want to have, a block explorer. They want to have debugging tools like Tenderly. They want to have like a safe integration so that multi-sigs can have like a nice UI. Um, they want like different custody options. So really like we're in this world right now where getting integrations is a big bottleneck for new chains. And then it's distribution, like getting to the users.
And looking ahead, what's in store for Optimism in the rest of 2025?
Yeah, so we're really focused on interoperability. Um, we believe that with the superchain, we can turn onboarding and distribution from a zero sum game into a positive sum game. This means that we believe that it is possible to basically enable each chain to kind of focus on onboarding their target market. And as each chain is doing that, it basically rises the tides for everyone. And all of the users are users of for everyone and not just a single chain.
We're looking forward to it. And that's all we have for today. I want to thank Mark for joining this episode. And as a reminder, Newsroom works tirelessly to get you accurate, informed crypto news. If you want to stay ahead, read the blog. Thanks, and see you next time.